There is a single building on the western coast of Taiwan that the United States, China, Japan, South Korea, and the European Union are all simultaneously trying to protect, replicate, contain, and control. It is a semiconductor fabrication plant, a chip factory. Inside it, machines etch circuits onto silicon wafers at a scale so small they cannot be seen by any microscope available to the public. The circuits are measured in nanometers, billionths of a meter. The tolerances required to produce them correctly are so precise that a single vibration from a passing truck can ruin an entire batch. The company that operates it is called TSMC, the Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Company, and without it, the modern world stops. No iPhones, no AI data centers, no advanced military hardware, no electric vehicles, no satellites. The chips TSMC makes are inside almost every piece of advanced technology on Earth, and no other company on Earth can make them. This is the story of how one man, one company, and one island became the most strategically important address in the world. Morris Chang was born in China in 1931, fled to Hong Kong during the Communist Revolution, studied at Harvard and MIT, and eventually landed at Texas Instruments in 1958, where he spent the next 25 years becoming one of the most respected semiconductor engineers in the world. By the mid-1980s, he was running TI's global semiconductor operations. He was passed over for CEO. He left. The Taiwanese government, which was trying to build a domestic technology industry, recruited him to run a state-backed research institute in Hsinchu. Chang was 54 years old. Most people assumed his career was winding down. He had a different idea. In 1987, Morris Chang founded TSMC with a concept that the semiconductor industry had never seen before. At the time, every major chip company did everything in-house. They designed chips and they manufactured them. The design teams and the fabrication teams were part of the same company, competing for the same resources, fighting the same internal battles. Chang saw this as a structural inefficiency. The skills required to design a chip and the skills required to manufacture one were completely different. Trying to do both at once meant doing neither as well as possible. His idea was to split them apart. TSMC would manufacture chips, only manufacture chips, for any company that wanted to design them. No competing products, no conflict of interest. Pure manufacturing, done at the highest possible standard for anyone willing to pay. He called it the pure play foundry model. The industry thought he was wrong. Why would a chip company trust its most sensitive designs to an outside manufacturer? Why would customers hand over their intellectual property to a potential competitor? Chang's answer was the entire business model. TSMC would never design its own chips. It would never compete with its customers. Its only interest was in being the best manufacturer on Earth. Slowly, the industry believed him. The pure play foundry model did something Chang had anticipated, and something he had not. What he anticipated, it allowed chip designers to focus entirely on design without the enormous capital cost of building and maintaining a fabrication facility. This unlocked an explosion of chip design companies, fabless semiconductor firms, that could exist with relatively small teams and no factory floor. Qualcomm, Nvidia, AMD, Apple's chip division, and dozens of others built their businesses on the assumption that TSMC would manufacture whatever they designed. What he had not fully anticipated, the manufacturing itself became the competitive advantage. Building a chip fabrication plant, a fab, requires tens of billions of dollars in capital investment, years of construction, and a workforce of engineers whose expertise takes decades to develop. The equipment required is so specialized that only a handful of companies on Earth can produce it. The processes involved are so complex that even companies with unlimited capital have struggled to replicate them. as TSMC invested relentlessly in each new generation of manufacturing technology, moving from 90 nanometers to 65 to 45 to 28 to 16 to 7 to 5 to 3. The gap between TSMC and everyone else grew wider rather than narrower. Intel, which had once been the world's most advanced chip manufacturer, fell behind. Samsung, which invested billions in its own foundry business, remained years behind TSMC on the most advanced nodes. China's SMIC, despite enormous state investment, is still multiple generations back. By the 2020s, TSMC was not just the best chip manufacturer on Earth. It was the only company that could manufacture the most advanced chips at all. That concentration of capability in a single company on a single island created a problem that kept defense planners and economists awake at night. Taiwan sits 180 kilometers from mainland China. Beijing has never recognized Taiwan as an independent state and has repeatedly stated that reunification, by force if necessary, remains a national objective. If China were to take control of Taiwan, it would control TSMC. If it controlled TSMC, it would control the supply of advanced semiconductors to the entire world. The strategic implications were staggering. Every government that depended on advanced chips, which meant every developed economy on Earth, would be dependent on Beijing's goodwill for the technology that ran its military, its economy, and its critical infrastructure. The response was a global scramble unlike anything the semiconductor industry had ever seen. The United States passed the CHIPS Act in 2022, committing $52 billion in subsidies to rebuild domestic semiconductor manufacturing. TSMC was pressured and incentivized to build fabrication plants in Arizona. Japan offered billions in subsidies for a TSMC fab in Kumamoto. The European Union launched its own CHIPS Act. South Korea pledged hundreds of billions in semiconductor investment. Every major economy on Earth was simultaneously trying to reduce its dependence on the single island where Morris Chang had built his factory in 1987. TSMC's Arizona plant broke ground in 2021 and began production in 2024. It was not a smooth process. Construction took longer than planned. Equipment arrived late. TSMC had to fly in hundreds of experienced engineers from Taiwan because the local workforce didn't yet have the specialized skills the factory required. Costs ran significantly over budget. The experience illustrated something that chip industry veterans had long understood. Building a semiconductor fab is not just a capital problem, it is a knowledge problem. The expertise required to run one is embedded in people, in processes, in institutional knowledge accumulated over decades. You cannot simply build a factory and expect it to work. You have to build the culture that runs it. TSMC knew this better than anyone. It had spent 35 years doing exactly that in Taiwan. Morris Chang retired in 2018. He was 87 years old. In an industry that moves faster than almost any other, he had spent 3 decades building something that his competitors could not copy, despite knowing exactly how it worked and having more money than they knew what to do with. The secret was not the technology. The technology could be studied and eventually replicated. The secret was the commitment. TSMC invested in the next generation of manufacturing capability before it was profitable to do so. It built relationships with customers based on a promise: we will never compete with you, and kept that promise for 35 years without exception. It hired the best engineers and gave them decades to become the best in the world at a job that required decades to master. The result was a company so deeply embedded in the global technology supply chain that removing it would collapse the modern economy. That is an extraordinary thing to have built. It is also an extraordinary vulnerability to have created. The world runs on chips. The chips run through Taiwan, and nobody yet figured out what to do about that. If you made it this far, thank you for watching. Please hit the subscribe button. It is free, and you will not miss the next one. See you in the next video.